Okay. Just let me know if I need to start over.
I know you're gonna have to now.
That's fine.
Oh, okay. The show is live. I guess I don't know what's going on. Wow. Hi, everyone. My name is Georgette Truan. I am the co-host for Relatives Fight CPS. My guest for tonight is Tom. Tom, introduce yourself, please.
Hello, I am Tom Shanholzer. Thank you for letting me be on the program tonight.
I am so happy you're here, Tom. Actually, I spoke to you at length, and I understand a lot about your story and what, as a grandfather, what you're going through right now. And I want you to share with everybody, please, about what you experiencing right now with CPS and their, I don't know, idiotic behavior to the public, please.
I'm starting to hear more and more stories. I would have never believed this until I started experiencing it myself.
Mm-hmm.
The story started back probably in around mid-December of this past year in 2020.
Mm-hmm.
My son and his wife, my son has 2 children. His
Mm-hmm.
wife has a child, and then they have one together.
Mm-hmm.
They bought a little lot in the town that they're in. They were tired of renting. They bought a
Mm-hmm.
little lot. They put a big down payment on a little cabin, had the cabin moved in, and they were trying to get all the utilities put in, and the city inspector was making it really difficult for them. They'd already expunged all their money. They were in the dead of winter, and it was kind of rough. They had no utilities. They were sharing off of a neighbor's for showers and a few other things.
Mm-hmm.
While all this was going on, the stepmother of the 2 children we're going to be talking about tonight, my son's wife, her brother and sister-in-law can't have children. And we know for a fact that they had plotted this long before they ever took the children to them. We'll get in that a little bit later. But they wanted these children. So they were throwing things in the sister and the brother-in-law's ear about, oh, if DHS knew that you didn't have no utilities, they'd come take them. And, we don't mind helping you out, and just anything you could think of to try and ease their mind to get the kids over there.
Mm-hmm.
Lo and behold, there's 2 bedrooms that's been ready for over 2 months for these kids before this conversation ever took place. Nobody knew it at this time. So about 2 weeks rolls on, and it's becoming harder. They're not making any headway getting any utilities. It's snow on the ground. So they discuss it, and they go over to the brother and sister-in-law's house and discuss it with them and agree. The children had stayed the night there a few times before, that if they're willing to hold on to them for a little bit while they get their utilities on, it's going to make it better for everybody. And they agreed, and they left the kids with them.
Mm-hmm.
So they're going to visit them, every day. And this goes on for a couple of weeks. They're starting to make it a little more difficult. So the mother thinks that this may not be a good idea. So she gets the kids back from them. And the same day she gets the children back, she contracts COVID. Well, she can't have the children when she's got COVID, so she has to take them back. Not wanting to, she has to. She takes them back over there, and they have power of attorney paperwork waiting for her. And it was either signed power of attorney paperwork in case we need to take the children to the doctor and you're not around, or we can't take your kids. Well, she's got COVID. She's got nowhere to go. They're living in a cabin that doesn't have any utilities of any kind.
Mm-hmm.
She didn't have a choice. It's her brother. I mean, she just had a bad feeling about it, but she went ahead and did it. She signed the paperwork. My son signed the paperwork. They now have the children, and it's what's called an out-of-home safety plan. So we're in deep December now, getting close to January. So they're doing the visits just like if they were in DHS custody. It's like every other week or every week, and it's becoming harder and harder. The brother is slowing down phone calls. He's slowing down visits. He's making them have to jump loops and contact DHS like they're a DHS case. And DHS is involved in this, even though the children aren't in DHS custody. They're still involved. These people were talking with DHS all along. Their mother and stepfather both worked for DHS. They had all the ins and outs of what to do to get these children in their home.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting into about February. They're making it even harder. I'm starting to make calls. I want to see my grandkids. He won't let me see him. He won't let me bring birthday or Christmas gifts to him. He wants me to go through the process of DHS. Well, this has nothing to do with me. There's no reason why a grandfather can't come by give gifts, visit the grandkids, and go on. But he was rude, didn't want to talk to me, didn't want to make any arrangements. He just wanted me to contact DHS and go through the process, just like it was my case and they were my kids. So that never did happen. I never could give gifts. We're getting into March now. The mother is finding it harder and harder to see her kids since they want the other two kids. Them other two kids, which belong to my son, are supposedly telling DHS they're too scared to come home. So since they're scared to come home, guess what? The other two children, they can't come home. And we don't even know that they're saying this, but this is what DHS is telling the family. Them two children are scared, and so long as they are, they can't none go home. So the mother is getting frantic. She has not even a 1-year-old child. He was about 9 months old at the time, or 8 months. And she wants her children back. She has to agree to split up with her husband. He move out and split her case to where it's her case with her two children, his case with the other two children. She goes through all the hoops and loops that you're supposed to go through. My son went through all of them. They both got to unsupervised visits. The week my son got unsupervised visits, he failed a drug test. The first and only thing in this entire case that is negative against him, other than having the police called over a domestic while they were outside hollering, they included that into this investigation.
What do you mean when the police called in? Was there a domestic violence between him and his?
Yes. Whenever they were outside arguing and there was some hair pulling, there was a slap that went on from the mother to the father. The father grabbed the mother's hair. She fell down. That was about the extent of it, but they were very loud. So the neighbor called the police. The police come out. The police asked them to separate for the night, in which they did. I think they got right back together later the evening, but they did separate. And the fight was over, but the children come out and heard it. So there was a report on it. So there is a domestic violence issue. Not that there was any charges or anything filed on either one of them. But the family knows of this. So while they're talking to DHS all this time and trying to, win over these children, they're feeding them everything negative they can find on the sister and the brother-in-law. So they're already at the point they both have unsupervised visits. When they get unsupervised visits, the father that week fails a drug test. They immediately went in and changed it from an out-of-home safety plan to wards of the state. They are now DHS custody. So everything had to go through them. He had to take domestic violence classes. He had to take drug tests. 2 weeks into this, he took 5 classes on his own that didn't have nothing to do with the DHS or the courts. He did it on his own just to prove that, he wants to do the right thing because he wants his kids back. The mother ends up, since she split up with the father, she got her children back within about another month and a half or 2 months after that. She went on her way, still living in her home with her kids. He is living in his home and still going through the lack of visits. He has had 7 separate caseworkers with 7 different supervisors in the 9.5 months that he has been in this. And now 9.5 months is from the time they relinquished the children willingly to now. As far as DHS, that's been since June 1. So just over 3 months they have been DHS custody. And he has been going through all the classes, all the drug screens, and has had no issues. But they still went through 7 different caseworkers. He's only 7th one, 7 different supervisors. And anytime he needs something from them, for instance, Fridays, he has a class. And that class needs to be done via Zoom, because of all the COVID that's going on. He has sent in a request, I think about 7 times now, to 2 different caseworkers, trying to get them to put that class back in Zoom, and they refuse to do it.
And what was the reason for refusing to do it?
They don't give a reason. On his drug test, when he went to court the last time, he had finished out all of his drug tests. Now they're saying he didn't get a dismissal.
What kind of drugs was it, Tom?
Say that again.
What kind of drugs was it that he was positive for?
It was a pill, but it was 2 different drugs. I'm not big on the drugs. I think one was amphetamine and the other one was something else.
Okay.
Like something maybe you would find, I think they said possibly in a Molly. He's saying that he was giving it as something else. That's neither here nor there. He could be lying. But the fact is, He was on no drugs when this started, and he had one failed drug test this entire time. Other than that, they've got nothing. So anyhow, they won't get his class changed to Zoom. They cost him his job. He is doing something 6 days a week for DHS, whether it be a class, a Zoom, a domestic violence, drug screenings. He is doing something every day, 6 days. So it cost him his job. He has a back injury, so he went into the hospital to get an MRI. They're working on that now. So he gets back with the wife. DHS at this time doesn't know it. During one of his visits, he puts his phone on video so that the kids can video chat with their siblings and their stepmother.
Right.
Oh, no. DHS found out about that and said that you can't do that no more. And they say, are y'all staying together? Well, yes, it's my wife and she has a child of mine. So we knew they were going to do something. And sure enough, last week, after they found out his actual address, which is her address, they went calling and they went and investigated her. And they had her bring the children up to DHS because she didn't have them in her home. She was afraid they were going to do something. They said they was not going to count that interview because the children weren't there. You have to bring them to our office. Reluctantly, she brings them to the office, and they tell her that if she is seen around him or he is seen around the children, they are immediately going to issue an order and pick up the children, and she'll be right back in the case. So now she's afraid that, she's going to lose her kids again, and they're wanting to run. So they don't know what to do. But let's talk about some of the lies. Let's get into some good lies. This is where some of these things is what's made me believe that DHS is not all they're cracked up to be. Back in August, I really got involved in this, and I was invited to a safety meeting, which is like we're doing here. It's a video chat. The parents are there, all the caseworkers and supervisors. The therapist is there. The foster parents are there. And then my wife and I were both there. So we're going through this safety meeting, and I want to know right off the bat, what's the delay? Why are the children not being, tried to be moved to me? I'm already going through the process with DHS to get them placed in my home because it was requested on June the 6th after a June the 3rd court date. And it's really important for anybody listening. Please remember these dates. The court date was June the 3rd, which was a Thursday. Okay. My case opened on a Monday, June the 7th. All right. We're gonna backtrack to those dates in just a few minutes. So anyway, I'm asking them, what is the holdup? Why are the children? Why is nobody pushing to get the children moved to me? Well, I'll tell you that at the end of this meeting. That's not what this meeting's about. And we'll talk about that at the end of the meeting. So I said, okay, we're going along and talking about things, and they just keep hammering my son, keep hammering him. They wouldn't say nothing good. Everything was bad. So finally, I start chiming in, and I bring up a few things. And I asked him, I said, well, Chris, don't you take some classes on your own? Which I knew he did. He takes 5 classes. And he said yes, and he started naming them off, and he named off all 5 of them. Well, the caseworker supervisor, instead of commending him and saying how good it was to be doing things like this, because it's proved, you're trying to better yourself, she had to spin it in a negative and say, oh, well, if he wasn't doing them, we could have made him. So she had to talk it down as though he wasn't doing anything good. We could have just made him do that had he not. That was one instance.
Wow.
Another instance, the father was saying the children no longer wanted to go to the library for a visit. They got to be quiet and use their quiet voice, and they just couldn't play, and it wasn't fun. So he was asking, could we go somewhere else? Could we go to a park or something like this? Nobody said anything about it. So about 10 minutes later, I start talking again, and I point blank addressed this to the therapist, and I asked her, has anybody spoke to the children to see what they want? What would they like to do? Oh, yeah. She said, yes, we've spoke to the children, and the children has already made us aware that they don't want to be at the library, and they'd like to be somewhere else. And I didn't say it because I didn't want to be rude to the lady, but she had a perfect opportunity to bring that up when the father brought it up. But she didn't want to do that. She waits till somebody point blanks address her and asks, what's the children want? She already knew, but she didn't bring it up when the father did.
Nope.
This therapist, she's really twisting these kids. She tried to keep these kids in the home that they were in, which is the brother and sister-in-law. And this went on all the way until this last court date. And about 2 weeks before the court date, they knew we were going to bring it to the judge that they were abusing the children. And when I say they, it wasn't both of them. It was the stepfather or the foster dad. He was holding the child's nose while he was asleep to wake him up, making it to where he couldn't
Right.
breathe.
I remember telling me this when I spoke with you the other day. Last week, was it? Was it last week?
Yeah. Yes, last week.
Tell me that they hold the children's nose. That's part of abuse.
Well, I'll tell you that DHS doesn't seem to think so, and I'll get into why
that's
they
abuse.
don't. To me, it is abuse. I mean, if he's got his mouth closed and he's dead asleep, and you hold his nose till he can't breathe, to me, that's abuse.
That's abuse.
Well, they thought that they were going to lose, and if they lost the children, where are they going to go? They're going to go to Grandpa. So they had to do something really quick. DHS, where they're at, are 100 miles away from where I'm at. And this case with CPS will not close. It will not transfer, but the children can. If the children transfer, what's the county where they're at going to have to do? They're going to have to drive 100 miles down here where I'm at to do a visit with Dad, and they do not want that.
No, they don't.
They won't admit that, but we know that's what it is. There's things that's already pointed to that in some of these safety meetings. So anyhow, they knew they were going to lose, so they get friends in their church, which happen to be A-OK teachers. They get teachers to apply. And the teachers, this is months after I've applied. They were approved 2 days before my approval. 2 days. They put him in with this teacher. It's a male gym teacher and his girlfriend. She is also a teacher. Now, I don't want to speak badly of these. These may be very nice people, but they're friends with the people who just give them away. And the people give them away because they knew they were going to lose in court over this abuse. So now these new people have them. We go to a court date, and the lawyer for my son, who is court appointed, during the first court date, we really thought she was going to help him. I mean, she made the judge aware that the children were not with family. The judge was upset. She thought that they were. So the judge kind of got on to DHS. The judge told DHS, if these children are going to be placed with their grandfather, I want you to get off your butt and get this taken care of, because I don't want to have to move children once school starts. Now, I'm not an educated man, but that tells me she's saying she would move them, but she didn't want to have to. So don't put me in that position by not doing your job.
Right.
Okay. When we get to this next court date, we have a new judge. DHS took advantage of that new judge by saying Judge Blank, which was the old judge, was very adamant about not moving the children once school started. They twisted them words around to mean something completely different.
See, that's the part right there that's so deceptive.
Oh, yeah.
So maliciously done. And it's just like they wait for the right moment to fit their own agenda.
Oh, absolutely. Oh, there was so much lying that went on in this. So let me get back to the first safety meeting. We get to the end of the meeting, and finally she's going to discuss with me what the delay is. She told me that my case is closed. I said, excuse me, my case is not closed. Yes, we show here that your case opened on June the 6th and closed on June the 8th. Now, like I told you earlier, let's remember the date. My case, it was put forth to the judge that the father wanted his father, which is me, to have placement of the children in court on June 3rd. That was a Thursday. So if June 3rd was a Thursday, and this DHS caseworker is telling me my case was opened on June the 6th, what day of the week would that be? Be a Sunday, wouldn't it?
Well, I don't know. June 6th, you said?
Yeah, June 6th. June 3rd was a Thursday.
Mm-hmm.
That's when my son petitioned the court for me.
Right.
June 4th was a Friday. I called my son. I said, I haven't heard nothing. He said, well, all the phones are down. Can I say the town that he lives in?
Sure.
Okay. It was in Oklahoma City. He said, Oklahoma City is having a major outage.
Mm-hmm.
The phones are down. You're probably not going to hear anything till Monday.
Mm-hmm.
So then Saturday rolls around, June 5th. June 6th is a Sunday. Mm-hmm. Now, June 7th, Oklahoma County DHS did call my county DHS, and they opened the case immediately, June 7th. But this caseworker is saying the reason why they've not contacted me or Carter County DHS is because my case was closed. It opened on June the 6th on a Sunday in a different county and closed on June 8th. So I took this to my caseworker and I asked her about it, and they did some research. They pulled up on the computer and said, well, if there was a duplicate case that got closed, we would be able to see that. Mm-hmm. So they did some research. There's no duplicate case, only one. My original case, which opened on June the 7th, is still active. They lied. And she doesn't realize that she gave a date when they're closed. And it wouldn't have been that county opening it because it was here where I live. So she point blank lied. So she calls my caseworker. My caseworker assures her, his case is open, and this is where we had some delays. Where the delay was is they was trying to get some police records, and there was no police records to get, and they were waiting and waiting and waiting for them. So finally, my son's attorney, even though she don't represent me, she contacted the town where DHS was looking for these police records, and they were assured there are no police records to give. So the attorney then contacted my caseworker supervisor and said, I've already contacted the county. There is no police records. We need to expedite and move this forward. They did. She immediately called me the very next day, told me that she was sick. No, I'm sorry. She got my references. So the next day she calls my 3 references. The 2 days after that, she calls me and tells me she's sick. She's going to have somebody filling in for her. That girl will be contacting me. She did contact me that very same day. She come to my house, did a home visit that very same day. The very next day, I was approved. So everything went lickety split.
But they approved it. They even approved your home. I remember that.
Yes.
They approved your home. They came to your home, checked everything was done.
The point is Carter County, where I live, the moment they knew there was a need to expedite it, they did it within a few days, 3 days tops from the time the DHS in Oklahoma County called Carter County. 3 days time, I was approved. But Oklahoma County never once called them and said, hey, we've got a foster parent that have give us a deadline, and we have to get rid of we have to take these kids back in less than a week. Can you expedite Mr. Shanholzer's? Then no calls. They never called me. They never called Carter County DHS. They never called when they thought my case was closed 2 days after it was open to say, why is this case closed? What happened? They didn't want to. They want the children to stay right where they're at. And the reason why is they don't want to have to drive 100 miles here for visits, and they lose their funding. The funding would then go to Carter County because the children would be fostered out of Carter County. So they lose that funding. So I believe that those are the 2 main reasons why they will not relinquish.
That right there, Tom, you just said it. They lose their funding.
Correct. That funding would go to Carter County.
They don't want to transfer the case to a different county. They will make everything possible not to do that. Even if you live in a different county, like just example, say the case is in Arizona and you live in, example, Las Vegas. Okay. Right. They're not going to transfer the case to grandpa, right?
No,
so
definitely not.
Like, oh, everything is wrong with grandpa. So even though grandpa was approved, but here we go, let's move it to a foster home in the county.
Yeah,
you understand what I'm saying?
Not a family member. Not a family member.
Not a family member, but a foster home. Why? Because they get funding.
That's right.
That's all. That's all it is. That's all it is.
Yeah. See, I have a family. I have a family member that's a state trooper, and he runs into this all the time when he pulls somebody over and there's children involved. And DHS comes out, and he says every single time, the first thing they do is they contact a family member because they don't want to have to keep these kids because they got no way to keep them. They have to find a foster parent, so they immediately call family. Not here in this case. They did not want to. When the case become a DHS case back in June 1, the first thing they should have done is try to locate relatives to take these children. They knew where the relative was because the foster parents are telling them, I'm the closest relative. He told them where I was. They didn't want that. They never contacted anybody. They just left the children there. And they did it for their own gain.
Wow.
So.
Wow. But I was talking about this today. Actually, we had a client that working with us. The mother lives in Nebraska, and the case is in Florida, and the grandmother was approved for everything. The grandmother actually has acres and acres of land. I mean, she has like 3 refrigerators. She sent me pictures of her refrigerators, and she has like a little farm. And the CPS said, "Oh no, we can't transfer the case there because the grandmother had a record on her about 35 years ago." 35 years ago or 25 years ago, something like that. And the record that she had against her is that she was at a party, like a birthday party, and one of the guys hit something on somebody else's guy's head, and she was in the middle.
Right.
So everybody was arrested. She had nothing to do with it. She doesn't drink. She was just an innocent person in the middle. So they let her go, and they heard the story that it wasn't her fault, blah, blah, blah. But they're holding that against her.
Right.
You believe that?
And see, I do. And see, I had some criminal history in my background as well. It was like about 31 years ago.
But that's a long time ago. You're not the same man, Tom.
Right. But all my charges, most of them wasn't mine. I did plead to them to cover, and I won't say who. I mean, I was covering somebody. A little bit of it was mine, and I took the rap for all of it. None of it was sex related. None of it was drug related. None of it was violent related. I got a full governor's pardon on every bit of it. And I've had the pardon for about 15 or so years now. And DHS run my background. They found every bit of that. They questioned me. They talked to me. They approved me. There was nothing in there keeping me from getting these children. I mean, as far as my background. But the moment Oklahoma County realized that there was an issue in my background, and that's what was taking so long, is they was waiting for information, that there was no information to give. They took it upon themselves in a safety meeting to violate my rights by bringing up my criminal history in this chat when there were people on this chat that was not privy to my case, like the foster parents, my son and his wife, the social worker who is not a DHS employee. None of those people had a right to hear anything. Now, I can understand DHS because they're all affiliated, but all these other people had no right. And the moment she brought up my criminal history, I shut her down, and I was quite loud and rude about it and told her she best not do it again. And she didn't. But the thing is she put that information out there. Well, while all this is going on, the grandchildren are saying over and over and over again to their caseworker and to the therapist, when are we going to get to go stay with my grandpa? When are we going to get to stay with my grandpa? They're getting tired of it. So this therapist went and told the children, your grandfather is a drunk and that he has criminal history, and that's why he was not approved. For one, I am approved. Two, these children have never seen me drink so much as a can of beer. Now, I do drink a beer every now and again, but the children have never seen me drink, so they couldn't have ever brought it up. So she just told a blatant lie to make the kids stop asking her, when are we going to get to go to grandpa's?
And some actually, most oftentimes they medicate the children too. They actually medicate the children.
Don't say that, Georgette. I'm going to have to get violent now. They better not.
I'm telling you too. But oftentimes I hear it from parents. Don't get violent, Tom. But oftentimes I hear it from parents. They do medicate children. They do. Yeah. They do, to keep them quiet, because a lot of children cry for their moms and dads or their grandparents, especially their grandparents, because children are very close to grandparents, you know?
Well, these children, I mean, they're not shy and timid, and I don't believe they are crying for their parents. They've had a rough life. When my son was with their mother, she is a very bad drug addict. She got my son to doing drugs. She's been in and out of jail and prison multiple times. She has given up 5 children, either given up or had them taken away from her. She's really a bad apple. So I was really instrumental in helping my son when he moved back to this state, of fighting legally with attorneys so that he could get the children. He got the children back. They were meeting halfway between Oklahoma and Kewanee, Illinois. She failed the show. They didn't know what to do, so they called the police. The police said, there's nothing you can do. Take them back home. So they took them home, called the judge. The judge, set a court date. She didn't show. So they got her for contempt of court. So she tells them, well, if you drop the contempt of court, I'll sign rights away and let you have them. So they drop contempt of court, but she never files anything. Well, it just gets kind of dropped, and they've had the kids here for 3 years, and she's not been a part of their life in any way at all. Not even so much as a phone call. So they've had a pretty rough life. So it's not like this is really tearing them up mentally and emotionally. I mean, I'm sure it is some, but they've had a pretty tough life, and they're really rugged kids, but there's still that emotion. I would much rather them growing up remembering, oh, we got to stay the summer with Pawpaw, rather than, we stayed with these people, Dad. Who are they? We stayed with these people, Dad. Who are they? Did you not want us? Oh,
wow.
Family is first. Family is always first. And you got family willing to take them, and they don't want to give them up to, family members because it hurts them. That's just wrong. Yeah.
Well, it's not about hurting them. It's hurting their pocket.
No, when I say hurting them, I mean, they're hurting the children.
Well, they're hurting the children. They're traumatizing the children.
Oh, absolutely.
They're traumatizing the children. Um, Tom, the only thing I can, unfortunately, Mr. Davis was supposed to be on the show today, but something came up that he couldn't be on the show with us today.
Okay.
However, you and I spoke at length about your case, and oh,
Well, looks like he made it.
You know, I've been sitting here listening to the show since 7. For some reason, you guys went live before 7,
yeah.
but I didn't want to interrupt the flow of the interview and the storytelling. Tom was doing such a great job telling his story. I didn't want to interrupt that. But Tom, did you have a question? Because I was listening to everything you said.
Well, I mean, I did ask in one of the chats earlier today. I'm not sure the lady's name, but I'm wondering if there is some civil liability that they've caused. I mean, they've done things like, for instance, the foster parents wanted to take the children out of state, and they sent a request form over to the father to sign for permission, and he was uncomfortable. He said, "No, absolutely not. I do not know these people. I don't want them to take my children out of state." They couldn't understand why he wouldn't sign it. He refused. Well, the caseworker takes the piece of paper back to her supervisor. She overrides it and signs it herself. The kids go out of state.
What state are you in?
Oklahoma.
So I'm licensed in California, not in Oklahoma, but in California, the social worker can't send the kid out of state unless the judge signs an order.
Her supervisor overrode and either signed her name or she signed my son's name. I don't know which she signed, but according to her, is my supervisor overrode it and signed it, and the children will go. And they did.
So in California, when you sue a social worker, one of the big hurdles you have to overcome is the fact that by law, they're granted qualified immunity. And I'm guessing that it's in every state. You know, that's a big hurdle to go over. We represent people in cases against social workers. And you know, and that's always the biggest hurdle, the qualified immunity. But we still do go after some social workers because it's, you know, some of the things they do are so egregious.
Right.
You know, when I was listening to you, here's what I thought. Here's a person that's being, you know, treated unfairly. The case is being handled unfairly, in our humble opinion.
Right.
And you're outraged.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't blame you. Here's the problem. Your outrage is not going to do anything.
Absolutely.
As a matter of fact, it'll be used against you.
You're 100% right. And it's so hard to keep your cool.
Right. So listen to this. So the question is, what are you going to do? Are you going to remain being outraged because, you know, you're just going to go like a circle, like a hamster on one of those wheels? You're going to be running, and going no place. Or are you going to do something about it? And then you're going to say, well, Davis, what can I do? Well, let me tell you, there's a lot you can do. Number one, you need to go in your area and find, or in your state, find a lawyer that can handle a CPS matter. There are a lot of things that can be done in your case as I listen to it. You need to talk to a lawyer so that you can get correct on the story, correct on the law, correct on the evidence, correct on the procedure there that's probably unique to Oklahoma. And if I recall correctly, I may be incorrect, but Oklahoma is one of those states where you're entitled to a jury trial if you want. So I don't know, you know, where that stands with the father in this case, or, you know, the other parties involved. So there's a lot you can do. The problem is you got to find out what your alternatives are, develop a strategy, okay, and implement the strategy. And, you know, implementation on strategies, it's, you know, it's always changing. It's sometimes, I'm in a case right now where it seems like the strategy for the case changes every day because of things that are happening outside of the courtroom, that are happening, you know, with the social worker, with the witnesses, with the evidence, you know, with relatives that are showing up in town. So sometimes it changes every day. But I can tell you one thing that you and your family should do, and the father, or, you know, should do. And that's number one, is to make a list of 25 people relatives and family friends. I'm going to say that again. Family friends or relatives that could possibly take the children. Possibly. Give that list to the social worker and make them investigate or have them investigate. And if they don't, the parent's attorney should be making a motion in front of the judge to try to force the social workers to make that evaluation. And if they live out of state or out of the country, sometimes that's better. The law's still the same. And if you don't get any resolution from the court, you can appeal it. You can file a federal complaint with the Department of Health and Human Services. They really investigate these cases. And according to their regulations and rules, family is first, Tom. Now, I know sometimes we're involved in these cases and it's like, family, who cares about that? Each case is unique on its own, facts and situations. But if you give a person, the social worker, 25 names, it's going to be pretty damn hard for them to say no to all 25. And sometimes if the mother and father are working together, I suggest to the mothers or the other attorney and parent, hey, we put up 25 names. Why don't you get 25 names? It's even harder to say no to 50 people.
Right.
I tell this story, and this actually happened. I showed up in a case early on in a case in a county here in Southern California, and I had 25 names. And the court accused me of harassing the social worker. And I didn't know what to say. And I said, well, Your Honor, I'm, just following Section 309 of the California Welfare and Institutions Code. And I was accused of harassing the social worker because I think he and I both knew that it's a lot of work to investigate a social, a relative or a family friend for placement.
Not one, let alone 25.
Right. So guess what happened at the next court hearing? The judge only made him do one at a time. And at the next court hearing, they approved the first name on our list. Right? Because who's going to investigate 25 people? That's a lot of work.
Yes, it is.
And sometimes, you have grandma number one, and the social worker said no to grandma number one. But when they look at the top 10, grandma becomes the most desirable person to have the child placed. Grandma lives in the county. She's not out of county. She's not out of state. That means she's not out of the country. That means we get to keep, the county gets to keep their money from the federal government on this case, because the money follows the child. The majority of the money for these CPS cases, is federal money, and it follows the child.
Right.
So we don't want to send money outside the county, outside the state, outside the country. Right. So you make that list. And, Section 309 in California isn't limited to a number of people. It's not limited. That
suggestion was made.
Okay.
Yeah, well, and they shut it down.
Well, here's if you've been watching my shows, and I keep saying this because people keep forgetting this part, the Vince Davis rule. If the social worker shuts you down on a particular issue, what are you supposed to do? You're supposed to file the appropriate motion and paperwork with the judge so the judge can make the final decision. And people all the time, oh, Mr. Davis, I saw your videos. And then they come and tell me, well, the social worker said this, the social worker said that. I don't give a, rat's whatever what the social worker said. It's what the judge says that's important.
But oftentimes the judge, sorry to interrupt you, but oftentimes the judges would listen to the social workers anyways.
Wouldn't listen or would listen?
Would. The social workers about the only ones that the judge was listening to.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, there's more to this thought.
Okay.
Let's say you ask the judge for the kid to be placed with grandma, and the judge says no because the social worker recommends. It's only a recommendation, no, for a variety of reasons. What's your next step? If you're listening to my show, your next step is file an appeal. What's your next step after that?
File another appeal.
No, file a complaint with the Department of
Oh.
Health and Human Services in Washington, D.C. By the way, federal law and federal money is big on placing children with relatives. Really big. It's when you get down to the state and local levels that they're really big on foster parents. And there's a reason for that. Many years ago, a decade ago, 2 decades ago, I used to represent a lot of foster parents. And there is a relationship between foster parents and social workers, and it's a working relationship. I don't know what you do or what you did for a living, but when you work with somebody, you know, kind of things, wheels get greased.
Yep.
That relationship is there. And they say everything is about relationships. Well, foster parents and social workers have relationships on many different levels. Some of them are even friends.
And
Right?
family.
Yeah, you can clearly see the social worker and the foster parents have a much better relationship than she does with the father.
Right.
It's evident.
Mm-hmm.
So the federal complaint with the Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division, CPS department, complaint at the state level.
Yeah. All this stuff is just now starting to be in the works. I just learned of your show about a week and a half ago. So some of these things are started.
Tom, where you been? Where you been, man? A week and a half ago.
I told him about the show. He was like, what?
Yeah, I had no idea. And I'm not even sure how I even seen it. I think I was doing some CPS research and I seen a YouTube video on you, and that's how I actually found it about a week and a half, maybe 2 weeks ago. But we were trying to play all the cards and do everything the right way. And I had no notion that DHS was this away. I thought, well, maybe the son is not doing something right. Maybe he's lying. And when I get involved in it and see all the lies, they're telling lies literally on me that I know is a lie. And I'm like, I've done nothing wrong. Why are they attacking me?
Welcome to my world, Tom.
Oh, it's just been horrible, the lies.
But don't get upset.
Mm-hmm.
My grandma who raised me used to say, don't get mad, get even.
Get even.
Okay?
Yeah, I don't want to be vengeful. I want the right thing, just like anybody else you do. You want the right thing to happen. You're doing everything you're supposed to. It shouldn't be this way. And I'm learning that it just is. And you have to fight.
Right. So now that you know that it is, what are you going to do? What are you going to do, Tom?
Well, I started something yesterday, and it's only because of funds. I relinquished all my funds to build an add-on on my house just so I could place the kids. And it took up all the money. It was a little over 20 grand, which for California, that's probably not a lot. But down here in Oklahoma, that's a lot of money. So we really don't have any savings left. So I went the cheapest way that I knew I could afford. And I went to an attorney yesterday, and he's going to literally file all the paperwork for a motion to intervene and give it to me. And I'm going to take it up to the county, and I'm going to file it.
Great.
I know that's not much. But
No, that's a lot.
Well, it's a start, and it's to say the grandfather is not going to stop. He wants these children. He's not going to let them be taken. He is in this. So,
right. But you know what else you can do?
I'm listening.
And Georgette and I talk about this all the time. Talk is cheap, Tom. Do you vote? Can you get people together to vote? In my state, you not only vote for lawmakers, you vote for judges. I don't know how it is in Oklahoma.
Same way.
Right. And
on the ballot.
And although these are state administered cases, it's all federal money. Department of Health and Human Services. They make the rules which the state must abide by. Many years ago, there was an issue, and I knew a couple of players in it. And what I'm about to tell you is just hearsay, second and third hand hearsay. But here's what I heard. There's a law in California that the press and the public are not allowed into CPS courtrooms. They're all confidential. And, there's a problem with that if you're a certain political bent, that the press has to help control the judiciary. It's one of the checks and balances. going back into the development of our justice system.
Right.
But if you don't let the press in to these secret hearings, court proceedings, they become what's known as tantamount to something called a star chamber. Well, when people were leaving Europe, England, back around Columbus's time, they were trying to escape that. They didn't want people making decisions in secret. They didn't want one guy being judge, jury, and executioner. There's no check and balance. So a judge in Los Angeles, a very famous judge, started a movement in California to open up the courts. Okay. A lot of legislation jockeying back and forth. Finally, they got enough support and they drafted the law. And apparently, before it was passed or put on the floor to be passed in California, they sent it back to DC. They sent it back to get approval from DHHS to make sure that, it didn't violate any federal rules, right? And mess with federal funding. Because who's paying for this? Federal government. Well, there's a DHHS regulation about confidentiality and privacy. And the story goes that DHHS said, oh, you can pass that law because you're the state of California, but you don't get any more federal money because you're not in line with our regulations. Guess where that law ended up?
I bet they're coming in the courtrooms now.
No, that law was put into the trash can because California didn't want to lose the money. This court system doesn't even run unless it has the federal money. Last time I looked, the budget for these types of cases at the federal level was $80 billion.
Oh my word.
80 billion. Tom, if you started counting right now, you wouldn't reach 1 billion by the time you died. I said 80 billion. And that's the last time I looked. It's probably more now, but who knows? 80 billion, 100 billion, doesn't matter.
Yeah, so you take even just say a 10% of that for some infractions and you're hurting them pretty bad.
So California didn't want to lose the money, so that law was never passed. So that law, those rules from the federal government can be changed, but who's going to do it? Congressmen and senators at the federal level.
Right.
When's the last time you wrote to a congressman or a senator at the federal level?
It's been a few years.
Right. And it probably wasn't about this.
No, it was about my wife and trying to, get her here from Argentina.
Right. So that's why I say to people, and I say this to Georgia, we talk a whole bunch of yin yang all the time. But what are we going to do? We're going to keep talking on this show, until we all die and no changes are ever made?
No, we
actually, senators, no, let me interrupt for a second. Senators are listening actually to our show. I can't say who, but some of them are listening to the show.
Right. I hope so. Okay. Because, I was telling somebody today that, when I first started doing this, it was mainly minorities who you saw in CPS courtrooms. And then CPS, for the big money, they crossed over and they started messing with white folks. And all of a sudden, it hit the fan. And it's hitting the fan all the time now because people are complaining. And it's just not poor people now. Middle class people are saying, wait a minute, you're just taking my kid and screwing me over? And I go to court and, I get, I come out feeling like you feel, Tom. Like something's wrong. Something's wrong with that.
Right. It was just used to prey on just the weak and the indigent and people they knew couldn't fight back. And they won those hands down every time. Now they're greedy. They're starting to get into the people who are middle class and they're fighting them now.
Right.
The rights are deliberately ignored for a reason. Our rights are ignored for a reason.
Well, yeah, because it doesn't benefit their agenda.
There you go. So they have to set rules in place to fit their agenda. So they can go around the rights of man and woman, father and mother, grandparents, families. Just go around it. It's like a stir, kind of like a stir. How can we go around this? Let's set rules. Okay? Regulations. There you go.
Well, it's not just one rule, though, Georgette. It's 5 or 6, so that when you pass that one rule that they have, oh, but you also got to do this one here. Or maybe you should have done this one here. For them, there's multiple rules. And if you follow the rules and you follow the guidelines, you're going in the right direction, which is not what they want. So they have other rules now that you've got to jump through more hoops. My son was taking drug tests through a company that they approved, and he's been doing it for 4 months now. Now they're saying that company only does UAs and they don't do all these other things like hair follicles and other stuff. So they are not going to count any of those drug tests that he did, even though they knew he was doing them there the entire time. They don't count.
Okay, Tom, I'm going to tell you something. I find that hard to believe. That's one of the most egregious things I've heard in a long time. And I've heard some egregious SHIT.
Right.
Okay. But what you said is accurate, that is the height of violating his due process.
He's got paperwork of every single drug test he's ever taken. They've known he's been taking them there every single, I guess it's now random. It used to be every week, and he's been taking them the entire time. When he went to court this last time, he had to take no more of them. It was over with, but he never got no kind of a final saying it's over with. It's just he'd done his time for drug tests. So when he went to court, they said, oh, well, did you get a final letter from them? Well, no, they didn't give me anything. Well, you're not over. Usually when you're in a DHS case, you have to do drug tests throughout the entire thing. So we need to get them restarted. They knew where he was going. So he said, okay, well, you need to send a referral letter to this place. The place will not let me start drug testing again unless you do a referral. He has 3 or 4 conversations in either text or email with his caseworker asking her, please send the referral back to this company so I can start my drug test. They never would. Now they have put him in what they call their drug testing place, and it's going to start from scratch.
Has he talked to his attorney about this?
His attorney in the last case lied to the judge and made herself look like an idiot. And since that court date, she has spoke to him in a tiny little response 2 times in the last 2.5 weeks. She won't respond to him. He admitted, or he told her that this new foster parent is doing the same abuse to the child. She doesn't even reply. And we was going to go to her law firm and say, we're not wanting to start trouble, but we need our attorney to talk to us, him. The law firm is her. She's the only person in her firm. It's her firm. So there's nobody to complain to on that scale.
Are you able to find a private attorney in your area?
Yeah, there is, but there's nobody here. The one I went to was a family law attorney, and I just really didn't get a very good feeling that he was very good. I was thankful he was only, writing up paperwork for me. There are some attorneys in the area where this is happening. I started to hire one. That's when we found out the children were being given up. We thought we're going to go to court and they're going to be given to me and it's over. So when the attorney called me, I said, I'm sorry, there's really no need to hire you. They're giving the children up. Well, they thanked me and I went on my way. Then when all this started and I tried to call back, they don't ever answer. So I don't know if I just made them mad because I didn't hire them, but I've left voice messages on 2 different attorneys that I initially talked to and they don't call back. But the funds is kind of tight. It would be rough. We're still willing to do it, but we would have to go up in that area where they're at to get a decent attorney.
May I recommend that you do that?
Okay.
Because what's going to happen, or what can happen, is that this case can get away from you, and the consequences are drastic. Your son could lose the kids permanently, forever.
Well, and that's what I'm starting to get afraid of, because they just give him another course to do, which is a 6-month course. He's already been in this for 9 months, so that's going to put him at the 15 months. So that's the window where they could start to terminate his parental rights. And even though he has nothing negative but 1 failed drug test, I don't see it staying in that, but I'm finding out they can do what they want to do. And so I'm scared that's going to happen. So I'm trying to be more and more involved as much as I can. I went today and bought a fifth wheel for them to move them into an RV park so that they could be separate from each other and DHS won't attack the mom. They're trying to come after the mom now because dad is still seeing her and around her children. So they threatened her the other day and said if they find him, and they're following, if they find him around her kids, they're going to take her kids and put her right back in a case. So I had to do something. So I went and bought an RV for them.
Hey, Tom, you know, the more you talk and the more I listen to you, you got to get that attorney. You got to get an attorney to represent you or represent your son in the juvenile case, the CPS case. It's imperative. Because, you know, a lot of people I talk to, you know, they're just law-abiding citizens, and you know they think that this country is operating fairly and righteously, but yet we see every day on the news that's not true. I don't care if you watch Fox or CNN or MSNBC, we see problems on the news all the time with our government.
Absolutely.
Okay? It's not perfect. I mean, it's maybe the best that's ever been invented, but there's still problems. You know why? Because people run it. And people, even myself, we're not perfect. Even Georgette isn't perfect. Can you believe that?
Watch it. She's got a temper now. Be careful.
Oh, you noticed that, Tom? Oh my God! Tell the truth, Tom. Tell the truth. Okay, so but get that attorney. At least go talk to an attorney, and then talk to him or her about, you know, the list of 25 names. You got to get those kids out of foster care. You got to get them with a friendly relative. It changes the leverage in the case. It's like you being charged with bank robbery and you're in jail awaiting trial versus you're out on the street. You're able to work the case, help your client, help your attorney in the defense, and you're just walking around because you're out on bail. That's like having a kid in foster home versus having a kid in, a friendly relative's home.
Right. And like I said, that was brought up in one of the court or the safety meetings that we had when we were realizing how they were really pushing to stop me from getting them. At this time, I wasn't quite approved yet, but we could tell they were trying to stop it. The son said, well, what if I get somebody else? You know, what if I try and find, oh no, only one at a time. Right now, we had to see if your father's going to be approved or denied. And then really, there's not any other family in that area.
Right. Well, it doesn't have to be in the area.
Oh, that's the whole problem. I'm already approved. It's because I'm not in that area is why they're not letting me have them.
Oh, they're not
using school.
Okay, so I don't know. You know, I'm not an Oklahoma lawyer, but I'd be very surprised.
I'm already approved.
If that's the reason why, and what you should do, you know, you need to talk to somebody at DHHS, make a complaint. You personally need to get a lawyer and go to court to get the children, try to get them placed with you. You personally. Forget about your son for a second.
I understand.
Okay. So you need to do those things. And you know what? What's going to happen is if you don't do anything, you're going to call me back or call Georgette back in 6 months, and you're going to say, you're not going to believe what happened. They took the kids and they had let the foster parents adopt them, and now we can never see them. And they say that we're not even related to the kids anymore. Don't think that won't happen in this country, because it will.
Oh, I'm starting to see it more and more. You know, I've heard a few things on your shows. I believe it.
It will. You know, I do a Saturday show, 3 hours from 7 to 10. I get calls from all over the country, Canada, New Zealand, the UK. And I hear these stories, and it just tears me apart because people every day are losing kids over what I consider, you know, sometimes it's justifiable. Look, Tom, is there child abuse in the world? Is there child abuse in the world? Yes, there is. Okay. I get the calls where I don't think it's justified. You know, I get those types of calls. You know, I don't get the call from, you know, the parent who killed the kid and, you know, doesn't care about the other kids and just out on the street. I don't get that call.
Right.
Right.
You get the ones that love their children and want their children back. They may have made some mistakes.
Right.
Some will own up to it. Some won't. but they still want their children.
Right. You know, I have a client, and I met with her today, and she said something very interesting to me. She's been going to counseling, and she said, "You know, Mr. Davis, I'm ready to admit that I made a lot of mistakes in my life and in this case." And I was shocked. I didn't let her know this, but I was shocked because over the months that I've known her, it's never been her fault. You know, it's never been her responsibility for what happened in the case. And just out of the blue, she's been going to this counselor who I happen to know, not personally, but I know him professionally. And, he's known as a very good counselor. And she said, I'm ready to just say what I did wrong, and I'm ready to move on and correct it. And then fortunately or unfortunately, depending on where you are, a lot of judges are looking for that.
Oh, sure. So is the DHS workers.
Right.
But a lot of people just don't see what they done as being wrong. So they fight it all along until they start seeing that there has to be something change. And if that's what it takes, you need to start realizing what got you in this position. And you played a role in that.
Right.
So you need to start taking responsibility. And that's why I told them, I wanted the children here. I don't care if you end his case or not. If you want to drag this out for a year, if you think that he really needs it, I don't care. My care is I don't want my children in foster care, my grandchildren in foster care. They need to be with family. But
right.
That's they don't care. It's neither here nor there with them.
I agree with you. Here we have somebody on Facebook posting a comment. You see this comment, Tom?
Let me get my glasses on. And
let me just read it to you.
Okay.
Oh, but Miss G is perfect in my eyes. Triple exclamation point. Just the way she is, attitude and all, triple exclamation point.
I think somebody likes that spiciness about you.
Okay, Colette, we'll talk privately. So Tom, make me that promise. Tell me that you're going to go find an attorney.
Yep.
I used to have a host on one of the shows who was a CPS victim, and she called about 50 attorneys before she found someone to take her case who didn't even charge her. So my question becomes, how many attorneys have you called?
I've never called that many. I have called quite a few. I would probably say maybe a dozen. But when this all got started, it seemed like it was dissolving just as soon as it was starting. So I thought there was no need for it. So I canceled it. And then we go to court and find, this didn't go the way we really thought that it should have or would have went. So now we're back into calling again.
Okay, so here's one of the things. You mentioned this, and I'm glad you said what you just said. You were lulled into a false sense of security. And you're being lulled in it right now. Because one of the things you said, well, they're thinking about me. Right? They're thinking about placing with me. And what you're doing is you're waiting on bated breath for them to approve you. But what you don't know is the opposite side of the coin. The longer the child stays with the foster parent, the harder it's going to be able for the child to be moved, even if it's to you, the grandparent.
Right. But
I see that so many times. It's in the CPS playbook.
Oh yeah, and they pick teachers, which makes it even harder. And the moment they got them, they enrolled them in soccer and basketball, which it makes it even harder. So right. They knew what they were doing, and they played by the playbook.
Right. But it's a playbook that you don't even know about.
I'm learning it though. I'm starting to figure it out.
And what happens is, Georgette, you're on mute. Let me take you off mute.
I said it's a rule book that's obvious. It's very obvious. Their goal is not to give the children to family members. Yeah, their goal is to get the family member to do classes and get distracted, right? And then all of a sudden the judge will say, I'm kind of reluctant to remove the children. Now they're adapted to the foster parent.
Yeah.
The parents are doing all these classes to get reunified with their kids.
Yeah, let's not help this family in any way at all. They don't have a home, but let's not help them. They don't have nowhere to go. Let's not help them.
Right.
Let's make them mad by not, taking some. He lost 3 visits in a row because they kept losing caseworkers. They kept transferring caseworkers. He lost 3 visits in a row. And they don't see that as harmful to the children. But if he misses a phone call, oh, that consistency is what they really need. So it's okay for them to cause harm to the kids, but yet dad can't do anything. So they want to make him mad, let him blow up. Oh, they got that against him. Hopefully he'll fail another drug test. So let's drag it out a little longer. It is a playbook, and I'm starting to really see that. And it's not right. You got people that's trying, and they don't want to help in any way.
Here is the biggest weakness you have. You're a regular guy. You work hard, or you've worked hard, and you believe justice will prevail and the CPS worker will do the right thing.
Isn't that what America should be, Vincent?
Yes.
I mean,
it should be.
And I've grown up that way all my life, and it's hard.
Yeah, and that's the problem, Tom. Yeah. You're dealing with people that don't abide by your sense of values. You think your government's supposed to be fair with you.
No,
it doesn't happen all the time in the CPS arena. Does it ever happen? Yes. I don't get those calls though.
Georgette's disagreeing with you, Vincent.
100, Tom. 100.
She does. When CPS does the right thing, we don't get that telephone call.
Right. You don't hear about it. Yeah.
Right. No reason to. Why hire Davis? Social worker is great. We get the call from people like you. I don't see what's wrong. I've passed. They still won't give me the child. What's going on? They have me waiting and waiting and waiting. And then one day, if you wait too long, the judge is going to say, Tom, I'm really sorry. I would have given you the child, but the kid's been too long with a foster parent and developed an emotional, psychological, and physical bond, which it would be detrimental for me to break.
Well, did you hear that in the beginning of the interview when me and Georgette was talking about why this new judge made that decision to leave them where they're at now?
Because the social worker recommended it.
No, the social worker never recommended. She lied about what the other judge said to mean something completely different. And she told it to the brand new judge, which was new not only as to this case, but she's new to taking juvenile cases. So
Wait,
what do you think she's going to do? She's going to go with what the old judge recommended. And that's not what the old judge recommended. DHS twisted around to mean something completely different.
Right. Hey, Georgette. We have run out of time this evening.
I'm so sorry, I guess. I'm sorry, Tom. I can spend hours with you.
That's all right.
Davis, just you, Tom.
I appreciate the opportunity, and I hope some more people listen to this and understand, just like I'm starting to, that they're not a fair place, and they're doing bad stuff, and we got to fight in any way we can, and I'm going to fight in any way that I possibly can.
Fighting, Tom. We got to keep fighting.
Hey, Tom, I want to thank you for being on our show this evening.
Yes, sir.
Very much appreciated. We have a lot of different shows during the week and on the weekend. Do me a favor, keep in touch with me and with Georgette, and maybe you can keep us updated as to what's happening if you ever get your grandchildren placed with you. Okay?
Absolutely.
Tom, before we go, there's a client, a friend of mine that just texted me, an attorney in your state, a CPS attorney. Call me tomorrow, please.
I will do that, ma'am. I thank you very much.
You will.
Thanks, Tom. Well, Ms. Truen, we've come to the end of another show. Great show. Great discussions. I was in court today, and I wasn't able to see the debut of your new show. What's the new show titled?
Fight CPS with Miss G.
Fight CPS with Miss G, and it's on Wednesdays at 1 p.m.
1 p.m. Yes, that's
so
correct.
All of you folks who are fans of Georgette Truen, she has her own show on Wednesdays at 1 p.m. And be sure and stay tuned and tune in and listen to her and watch her. Even Carissa says it was fabulous. It was a great show.
Thank you, Carissa.
Tomorrow, Thursday night, 7 p.m. on the same social media stations, we have Fight CPS, the civil rights struggle. So all of you guys, please tune in tomorrow at 7 p.m. and we're going to be with Amanda Cisco and Vince Davis, and we're going to be talking about all things civil rights with CPS and, possible lawsuits and the such. Okay, so good night, and we'll see everybody tomorrow at 7 p.m.
Good night.